Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Sorry that I'm late. Parshas Lech this week. We usually start with something from the Fedra. So begin by pointing out that the names of the Sedras are significant. The Sedra is called Lech, for example. It's not just because it happens to be at the beginning of the Sedra, but because this is the name of the Sedra. The name of something describes the topic and the theme of the Sedra. So if there are many chapters and many psukim that comprise Parshas Lech, but every one of them is a part of Parshas Lech. Just to point out this idea that the names are not arbitrary, they're not just out of the hat. They actually have a significance. We see this illustrated very strongly in the Sedra that we read this past Shabbos. The Sedra that we read this past Shabbos begins with the words Eila Toldos Noach. So if you were naming Sedras just based on the first words of the Sedra, and you came across the words Eila Toldos Noach, and you have to say, what name would you give this Sedra? I guess people would say Toldos. The second word in the Sedra is Toldos, right? Eila is not a name for a Sedra, but Toldos. Then when it comes to the sixth Sedra, which starts Eila Toldos Yitzchak, you would say, okay, what do you think now? So you'd say, well, we can't use Toldos because we used that already for the second Sedra. So we'll call it Yitzchak. Right? That sounds pretty commonsensical. Nevertheless, we see that the custom by Yidden is that the second Sedra is referred to as Noach, and the sixth Sedra is referred to as Toldos. So we see very clearly that there's meaning in the names of the Sedras. It's not just arbitrary, it's not just picking from the first words of the Sedra. There's a reason why that name is used. So this Sedra is called Lech Lecha. And Lech Lecha means go forward. And if you look at the entire theme of the Sedra, it's Avraham Avinu going forward from level to level. He starts off in Chutz La'aretz. Your land and your birthplace and your father's home. And the Almighty instructs him to go El Ha'aretz Asher Areka, to go to Eretz Yisrael, to the Holy Land. So he's making progress. He's moving from Chutz La'aretz to Eretz Yisrael. He's going. It's a halicha. It's progress. It's upward journey. Then we go further in the Sedra, and it says that Avram journeyed continuously journeying southward. So our Chachamim tell us, why was he continuously journeying southward? Because he wanted to go in the direction of Yerushalayim, where the Shekhinah was. So within Eretz Yisrael itself, he didn't just suffice for being in the Holy Land, but he wanted to go to where the ultimate holiness is, in Yerushalayim, where the Shekhinah is. So he journeyed southward. Later in the Sedra, we come across Avraham Avinu entering into a covenant with the Almighty, the Bris Bein Absarim, and eventually we come to the peak of his relationship with Hashem that was achieved through the Bris Milah, through his circumcision. So the whole Sedra, we find Avraham Avinu progressing and moving forward. Lech Lecha. In fact, the Alshich says, Lech Lecha, go to you. Lecha means to you. What does it mean, go to you? Limhuscha v'yatzmuscha, to your essence. The essence of every Jew is his neshama, which is a part of God. And by obeying the Almighty's instructions, you come closer to revealing and to becoming in touch with your true essence. So Lech Lecha, go towards your true essence. So the whole Sedra is about Avraham Avinu progressing spiritually and intensifying his closeness to Hashem. So it's about going upward, forward and upward. But there's a little hitch to this, and that is right after the pasuk that we just mentioned that Avraham traveled continuously southward. The next pasuk is Vayhirav ba'aretz. There was a hunger in the land. Vayered Avraham Mitzrayim, and Avraham descended to Mitzrayim. So that's not an ascent. That's not upward and forward and upward. That's downward. Avraham descended out of the Holy Land and he went to Egypt. That's not part of Lech Lecha. Now, Avram's descent to Egypt was not only a descent for him, it was also a descent for his whole Raison d'etre, his purpose. What was Avram's purpose? His purpose was to publicize the oneness of Hashem and the greatness of Hashem, to convince people to give up idolatry and start serving one God who created the heaven and the earth and recreates the heaven and the earth every split second from nothing. He's the only one, and you should serve God. That was Avraham Avinu's message to all the people that he encountered. In fact, it says, at the beginning of the Seder, Hashem promises Avraham, you should go to the land I will tell you, that I will show you. What's going to happen over there? I will bless you. And I'll make your name great. Now, why did Hashem think that he was enticing Avraham by promising, I'll make your name great? Was Avraham into becoming great? Was he into becoming famous? Did he want to become a star? Avraham Avinu was humble. He said, I am dust and ashes. So what's Avraham Avinu is not interested in becoming great? So what does Vagad Lo Shmecha mean? Vagad Lo Shmecha means, I'll make your name great, and through your name becoming great, what you stand for will become great. Avraham Avinu is the ambassador of the Almighty in this world. So if everybody will see that Avraham Avinu, who serves one God, is becoming great, that means that God is great. And that will make a Kiddush Hashem. In fact, it says that, the Medrash says that the story of Hashem telling Avraham to leave his place and go to Eretz Canaan is similar to a jar of perfume that was sitting in the corner. And it wasn't having any influence. Because it was sitting in one place, it wasn't being disturbed, and therefore it wasn't giving off its aroma. So the owner of the jar said, let me take this jar and move it around, one place to another. And as it's moving around, it'll give off its perfume, and people will benefit from it. So Hashem said to Avraham, you're like that jar of perfume. You're sitting in the corner in Chara. Your influence is limited. Lech Lecha, me artzecha, go away from your land, from your birthplace, and go to the land that I will show you. And over there, you'll begin to have tremendous influence. So Avraham Avinu comes to Canaan and is ready to start this work of spreading the word that there is one God, and he's the creator of the world, and he's the only one you should serve. Right? So when Avraham Avinu, Sarai, come to Canaan, Tzaddikim come to a place, you would expect them to bring great blessing to the place. What's the first thing that happens? There's a famine. Such an intense famine that Avraham and Sarai could not stay any longer in Eretz Canaan. And they were forced to leave the land of Canaan and go to Mitzrayim. So what kind of an impact did that make on the surroundings? People said to them, excuse me, are you Avraham and Sarai that propagate the fact that there's only one God? Are you the Avraham and Sarai that were promised Hashem's blessings? And you come here, and the minute you come here, we're struck with a famine? What's going on? This caused a tremendous chilul Hashem. So not only was it a descent for Avram, it was a descent for the purpose that Avram was here for. Furthermore, for Avram himself, this was a spiritual descent. Because it says that when he even came close to Egypt, before he got to Egypt, when he just came close to Egypt, it says Avram said to Sarai, behold, I know that you are a beautiful woman. So the obvious question is, what do you mean? Avraham and Sarai were married for so many years, and suddenly he realized that she's a beautiful woman? Where was he till now? So Rashi gives a number of interpretations, but there's one beautiful interpretation that Avraham was a very spiritual individual. So when he looked at someone, he saw only the spirituality. But Avraham and Sarai were married for many years, but whenever he looked at Sarai, he only saw the spirituality in her. But when he came even close to Egypt, Egypt is a decadent place, Erev Haaretz, the most decadent place on earth. So the atmosphere coming from Egypt already began to influence him on his level. And suddenly he realized that Sarai was actually physically beautiful. So he said, now I know that you're a beautiful woman. So the descent to Egypt was not only a physical descent, it was a spiritual descent, even for a tzaddik like Avraham Avinu, on his level. So it's very problematic, this descent. And then what happens? As soon as they come to Egypt, Sarai is abducted, taken to the house of Pari. And even though miraculously she was protected, nothing happened to her, but this is a calamity, this is a disaster. Does this belong in Lech Lecha? Lech Lecha is all about moving forward and upward. And here's a story that seems to be going the opposite direction of the whole theme of Lech Lecha. What's it doing in Lech Lecha? And the answer is, we have a principle, Maaseh Avos Siman L'Bay. Everything that happened to the patriarchs and the matriarchs is a sign of what's going to happen to their children. Of what's going to happen to their children. not only is it a sign of what's going to happen to their children, in other words, by seeing what happened to them, we know what's going to happen to their children, but it actually empowers their children to deal with the various challenges that they have to deal with, because the way that Avram, the Abbas and the Imais dealt with those challenges, empowers us to deal with the same. So Avram descended to Egypt. So it says in Sfarim that that's what enabled the Jewish people to go down to Egypt. Because Avram went down to Egypt, so the Jewish people went down to Egypt. And just like going down to Egypt, Avram and Sarai their integrity remained intact. They didn't allow Egypt to draw them down, pull them down. And Sarai retained all their level of tznius, even in Egypt, and even after being abducted and taken to Pharaoh's house. So the Jewish people were able to retain their status in the land of Egypt. And especially the Jewish women in Egypt, which in the Parshas Pinchas, if you remember, we read about that all the families are mentioned in Parshas Pinchas. It talks about the counting of the Jewish people. And over there, every tribe and every family is referred to as Haruveni, Hashimoni, Leperetz Mishpachas HaParzi, Ulezerach Mishpachas HaZarchi. So in every family, there's a Hey at the beginning and a Yud at the end. Added. With one exception. The one exception is Yimna. LeYimna Mishpachas HaYimna. The reason that Yimna is an exception, Rashi says, is because Yimna explains what's the whole idea of the Hey and the Yud. That the nations of the world said to the Jewish people, what are you making a big deal about your yichus? This one's the son of this one, this one's the son of this one. If the Egyptians were able to be in control of your fathers, to enslave them, they were surely in control of your mothers as well. So what are you talking about, Chainik? What are you telling me stories about the yichus of the Jewish people? It's nothing. So Hashem goes and puts his name on every Jewish family. A Hey at the beginning and a Yud at the end, the Yud K of Hashem's name. To testify, Hashem says, I testify to the integrity of the Jewish family, the integrity of the Jewish women in Egypt, that they maintained their standard of tznius without any compromise. And that's why the only family that doesn't have a Hey and a Yud added to it is Yimna, because Yimna starts with a Yud and ends with a Hey. It already has Hashem's name. So where did the Jewish people get that power from? They got that power from Sarai, who was taken to Egypt in Pharaoh's house. And over there, she maintained her level of tznius at the highest level. So that empowered the Jewish women in Egypt under the most difficult circumstances to retain that level. And then it says, Vayal Avram in Mitzrayim, that Avram ascended from Mitzrayim, Hu ve'ishtay, he and his wife. And that's what empowered the Jewish people to leave Egypt. Even though Egypt was a place where even one slave couldn't escape from. Here, 600,000 men, together with their wives and children, which came to more than 2 million souls, marched out of Egypt in a bright day, in front of Lecha Mitzrayim, in front of all the Egyptians, and nobody could stop them. Why? Because Vayal Avram in Mitzrayim, Hu ve'ishtay. Avram already left Egypt together with his wife, and whatever happens to the Avos is a power to their children to be able to do the same. In what state did Avram and Sarai leave Egypt? So it says, Avram kaved ma'od, ba'mikne, ba'kesed, ba'bazal. Avram was heavily laden with cattle, silver, and gold. Pare gave them incredible gifts to prove that he did this. Nothing happened, and he apologizing and everything else. So he gave them great gifts. He gave them a tremendous amount of cattle and sheep and silver and gold, and that's the way Avram and Sarai left Egypt. And therefore, their children after them also left Egypt heavily laden with silver and gold. Remember, the Jewish people left Egypt, and they'll come out with great wealth. And the Medrash tells us that there wasn't a single Jew who left Egypt with less than 90 camels, donkeys laden with the gold and silver of Egypt. So that was again Maaseh of a similar bun. Now, by Avram and Sarai, once they came out, once by Yal Avram in Mitzrayim, it became obvious that let me illustrate it in the following way. It says, when Avram came up from Mitzrayim, it says, Vayelech lemaso minegev ad Beisel. They journeyed from the south towards Beisel. Yeah, Beisel is in the north of Eretz Yisrael. They journeyed from the south to the north. So Rashi says, two interpretations. What's this pasuk trying to tell us? One interpretation is that they stayed in the same inns, same hotels that they stayed on the way down to Egypt, they stayed on the way back up. Here you learn that a person should always stay in the same place. Second interpretation, Rashi says, "B'chazarasai para hakafaisa." On the way back, they paid back their debts, which means Abraham and Sarah were journeying down to Egypt. On the way, they had to stay somewhere overnight. They had to eat a meal. So they went to an inn. They asked for a meal. They asked for a place to sleep. And the innkeeper said to them, "It's going to cost you so much and so much. How are you going to pay? Visa, MasterCard, how are you going to pay?" So they said, "Sorry, we're penniless, but we trust in Hashem. So Hashem will provide. He will surely give us the money to pay you back. Give us some credit, and Hashem will provide for us." So people were very lucky. People trusted them, and they gave them. Then they came to Egypt. Now on the way back, they came back heavily laden with cattle, sheep, gold, silver, everything you can imagine. So b'chazarasei, on the way back, para hakafaisa, they paid back their debts. So it says in Svarim that the paying back the debts wasn't just the financial debts. There was another debt they had to pay back. In every place that they stopped on the way down to Egypt, people said to them, "Are you Avram and Sarai that are famous for propagating the fact that there's only one God? And you're going penniless to Egypt? Where's your God? Why isn't he looking after you?" And they had nothing to answer. They said, "We don't have any questions. We don't have any complaints. We accept everything God is doing is for the good, but we don't know the answer." So in every place they went, they were owing an answer. B'chazarasei, on their way back, para hakafaisa, they paid back all their debts. They came back and they showed people what they were coming back with. They said, "Now you want to know why there was a hunger and why God wanted us to go down to Egypt? Obviously, God wanted to shower us with incredible blessings, such great blessings. He could have made us prosperous in Eretz Canaan, but he wanted to do it in such a massive way that is beyond anybody's expectation. So he had us go down to Egypt, and Sarah should be abducted. And Pharaoh, who was the king of Egypt, the richest person at the time, showered his wealth upon Abraham and Sarah. So Hashem's blessings came in the most incredible way. So it follows that the Vayered Avram Mitzrayimah, Avram's descent to Egypt, was really for the purpose of the ascent. It was in order to make a Vayal Avram in Mitzrayim. In order for Avram to come up from Mitzrayim. And this is what the Avos, Abraham and Sarai, gave to the Jewish people after them, that when they went down to Egypt, their descent to Egypt was also only Yeridat Seirach Aliyah. It was a descent for the purpose of an ascent, that they should come out with great wealth, physical wealth, which is very significant because in every physical thing in the world there are sparks of godliness. And when a Jew gets ownership of that physical thing and he's able to use that for the service of Hashem, as the Jewish people did, they took their wealth and they used it to build a Mishkan. So then you redeem and liberate and refine the sparks of godliness that are contained within that physical object. So the physical wealth that the Jewish people took out of Egypt was very significant. And more than anything else, the great spiritual wealth. That as a result of their descent into Egypt and their exodus from Egypt, the Jewish people got the biggest gift of history, that they were brought before Mount Sinai. And over there, Hashem himself revealed himself to them. You chose us from all the nations. You lifted us up from all the tongues. You brought us near to your service. You gave us your beautiful Torah, your incredible mitzvahs, and you called upon us your great and holy name. So the whole descent to Egypt was only to ascend at every level and get the greatest greatness, the greatest gifts that it's possible for a human being to have. And that is the descent into Egypt, which is only a practice run for the descent that we're experiencing in this Golus, which we can tell from the fact that the Golus is so long and hard and difficult. What an incredible ascent is on the way. Because every descent is only for the purpose of an ascent, right? We have to remember that Hashem is the creator of the world. He recreates the world every second from nothing to something. And the whole purpose of creation is B'shvil HaTorah, B'shvil Yisrael, for the Torah and for the Jewish people. And Kol Ma Shebara HaKadosh Baruch Hu B'Olamai Lo Broi Ela L'Chvei. Everything that Hashem created in this world is for His glory. So any hiccup that might be on the way, any descent can only be a preparation for an incredible ascent. So there's never any room for despair or for becoming despondent, because Vayered Avram Mitzrayimah is part of Parshas Lech. It's part of going forward and upward. The only thing is, sometimes you go forward and upward on a straight path, on a slight incline, right? And sometimes the way to go forward and upward is you have a little hitch and then you come flying up in an incredible, unexpected way. So it's called Yerida Tzedach Aliyah, descent for the purpose of an ascent.
No.
Sure.
But they were so how can you say when they left the time that it was an ascent and once they're low, they had to go out?
So they were so low and they had to go out, and the fact that they were so low and they had to go out was what the challenges that they faced in Mitzrayim and the way they dealt with them prepared them for the most incredible ascent, which they had by Mountain Torah. Fact is, the 49 days after they came out of Mitzrayim, they got the Torah, right? This goal is also very challenging, but it's preparing us for the most incredible. The Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi is going to be Gadol Yeh Kved Havayis Hazeh Hachem Min Adishay. That the glory of Hashem will shine forth in the Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi in an infinitely greater way than it ever did before, and it's this Golus that's preparing us for. That we understand how the way Hashem has it all figured out. We didn't understand it when Avram went down to Mitzrayim. It looked beyond our understanding. We didn't understand when the Jewish people went down to Mitzrayim, and we don't understand it now either. And as it gets tougher, it gets harder to understand. But we know that everything Hashem creates He creates only for His glory, and the whole world is created and recreated every second b'shvil HaTorah, b'shvil Yisrael. So every descent can only be for the sake of an ascent. And the greater the descent, the more you realize how incredible the ascent, which is going to follow, is going to be. I heard a story just the other day. I was listening to a shiur, a recorded shiur, and I heard a phenomenal story. That a Yid came to the Rebbe, standing in Yechidus. The Rebbe was sitting in his place, and he was standing opposite the table. And he was telling the Rebbe about a difficulty that he was going through, a spiritual difficulty, a yerida, a fall that he had. And he was asking the Rebbe to help him. So the Rebbe said to him, "Can you please jump over this table?" Taken aback. When he came to the Rebbe to speak about his spiritual condition, the Rebbe, it's not a gymnasium here. He said, "Yes, please jump over the table." And after a few times, he realized that means business. So he stood up and he took a few steps back. Yeah, and the Rebbe said, "Stop. I want to ask you a question. Why did you take a few steps back? I told you to jump forward. Why did you jump? Why did you take a few steps back?" He said, "Well, it's natural. In order to jump, you have to back up so you can take a jump." And so that's what I wanted to point out to you. You've taken a few steps back in life. I agree with you. But it's only for the purpose of taking a tremendous leap forward. Every descent is only for the purpose of the message. So the Vayered Avram Mitzrayim, that Avram descended to Egypt, is part of the Vayal Avram Mitzrayim, and therefore it fits right into Parshas Lech. In fact, it's very appropriate for Parshas Lech, because the descent of Vayered Avram Mitzrayim is a significant part. And when a descent is for the purpose of an ascent, the descent is part of the ascent. It's not even a descent at all. The interesting thing over here is that according to most of the commentaries in the Chumash, we understand this was one of Avraham Avinu's tests. The story with the famine was one of Avraham Avinu's tests. Now, the way we normally understand it is that he passed the test. He didn't complain. He didn't ask questions. He accepted Hashem's what Hashem did, and he did what he had to do. He went to Egypt and then dealt with whatever had to be done. But the Ramban, he actually says that Avram's going down to Egypt was the wrong thing to do. It was a sin. Because what Avram should have done is he should have remained in Eretz Yisrael and had faith in Hashem. That Hashem, the Ramban says that Avram's going down to Egypt was a sin. Why? He should have stayed in Eretz Yisrael in the famine and trusted that Hashem would look after him in the famine. No, it doesn't say. Hashem didn't tell him. It said, no, Lech Lecha to Eretz Yisrael. Lech Lecha, leave your father's place, your birthplace in Charan, and go to Eretz Canaan. Well, then when he comes there and he starts journeying southward, suddenly there's a famine. And it says, there was a famine, and Avram descended to Egypt. So the way most Mefarshim learn is that Avram passed the test. Hashem tested Avram by making a famine, and he didn't ask any questions. He didn't complain. He just did what he had to do. He went to Egypt, and then he came back. But the Ramban says, no, he shouldn't have done that. He should have had trust in Hashem, that Hashem would be able to protect, to look after him in the famine.
Yeah, you could talk yourself this.
One second. So it depends on the levels. Hashem just told, from the Ramban's perspective, Hashem just told him to come to Eretz Canaan. Right? And Hashem makes a famine. Hashem not know there was going to be a famine. He told them to come here in the famine. So they're probably going to look after him in the famine. Anyway, so the question is, this whole principle that we were saying, that every descent is for the purpose of an ascent, that works very well if the problem was put to you by Hashem. Hashem doesn't do anything. Everything that comes from Hashem is good. Sometimes it's revealed good, sometimes it's concealed good. So if it's concealed good, it's a descent for the purpose of an ascent. But if you say that Abraham did the wrong thing by going to Mitzrayim, so it was his free choice with which he messed up. So if a person causes a descent through their free choice, how can you say every descent is the purpose of an ascent? It was my free choice. I made the wrong decision and I messed up. And I will have to suffer the consequences. And still in all, we say that Abraham Mitzrayim is in Parshas Lech. So the answer to this is, we have to differentiate between the act that a person does with their free choice, which can sometimes be right and sometimes be wrong. Hashem gives us free choice. But then there is the situation which now exists after that act. Everything in the world is Hashem's creation. So the situation that now exists as a result of that act, after that act, is part of Hashem's creation. Hashem is recreating the world every second from nothing to something. And he's recreating the world every second from nothing to something, only for the Jewish people to be able to serve him with the Torah. So this new reality that exists as a result of my mistake is also part of Hashem's creation. And every part of Hashem's creation exists only in order to enable me to glorify Hashem. So I have to believe with absolute faith that this situation, although it was created by my mistake, is also in order to enable me to glorify Hashem in an unprecedented manner, beyond anything I could have done had I not have made that mistake. And use that situation as a springboard to reach incredible heights. As we know, that a place where a Baal Tshuva stands, a perfect tzaddik can't stand. So through having fallen, even when it was one's free choice to fall, one is enabled to reach an incredibly lofty place. Because the result, the sin itself, the wrong decision itself is your free choice. But the result, the situation that you find yourself after having sinned, is part of Hashem's creation. And every part of Hashem's creation exists only for the glory of Hashem. So there must be potential, there must be an ability to turn that round, not just to get back where you were, but to turn it around to something incredibly great, which is greater than that which could have been achieved had everything have gone smoothly. So even according to the Ramban, Vayered Avram Mitzrayim is part of Parshas Lech. So the message is a very powerful one. And whatever situation a person finds themselves in, there's never room for despair. There's never room for becoming despondent. Because we know that everything is from Hashem, and Hashem is good, and if something appears to be a descent, it's only a descent for the purpose of a much greater ascent. So you read the Tzorech Aliyah. Therefore, everything is part of Lech. Everything is part of go forward. Before we go on to Tanya, are there any questions on what we spoke about today?
Question. I think that if Abraham wasn't present, it would have been responsible to say that no. I think the fact that actually as a husband looking after his wife is the best thing as a husband is exactly and that getting something after this one.
Okay, so the point, let me just repeat your question for the people that are watching on the Zoom. Question was, perhaps the reason that Avram made the decision to leave Mitzrayim, I guess you're commenting on what I said about the Ramban, who criticizes Avram for his decision, and you're suggesting that perhaps he made that decision because he was married and he had a responsibility to look after his wife, and therefore he made that decision. That's very possible, but it seems that Avram and Sarai were on the same page, and they made decisions together, and they decided together that that was the right thing for them to do. And according to most of the Rishonim, they did the right thing. They did what they needed to do, and they passed the test because they didn't complain, they didn't question, they accepted whatever Hashem does must be for the best, and they just went along, they rolled with the punches, as they say. According to the Ramban, it's questionable whether Avraham did the right thing, and the point I'm only trying to bring out by bringing the Ramban's opinion into this equation is to show to what extent we say that every Yerida is only Tzorech Aliyah, every descent is only for the purpose of an ascent. even a descent that you can blame yourself for, and you can say, I did the wrong thing, and therefore I got myself into this mess, even that, once it exists, it's part of Hashem's creation. And now that it's part of Hashem's creation, it takes the same rules as the rest of Hashem's creation, that everything is for the best. And it's just a question of finding how to use this situation as a springboard for an incredible leap forward. So, for example, if a person sinned, he did the wrong thing. Instead of wallowing in it, they should look at it as an opportunity to take this, the fact that they've gone so far away to where they should be, is there to enable them to develop a yearning and a thirst that is to Hashem, that is far beyond that which a tzaddik could achieve. So they're able to use that as a springboard to reach a great height, which they could never have reached had it not have been this way. And if a person originally goes down that path and says, I'm going to sin so that I should have that experience, that is forbidden. And Chachamim say, don't do that, because if you do that, Hashem will not give you the assistance that you need to be able to follow it through. But if it happened already that a person sinned, and he comes along now and he says, oh, what do I do now? The answer is, what do you do now? You're a lucky man. Right now you're in a situation where a new reality was created, which is going to give you opportunities that never existed before. So all you need to do is turn it around. Don't pity yourself. Turn it around and make out of it an incredible leap forward in a way that you could, beyond anything you could have ever expected. In Tanya, we're in the middle of chapter 48, Perek Mem Ches. We're on page Samach Ches.
254 and 253.
Thank you very much. 254 and 253 are the numbers on the bottom of the page. So on page Samach Ches, we're about 12 lines from the top, just above the middle of the page. We count the lines. It's 4, 6, 8, 10. 11 lines from the top of the page. New line begins with the word V'hamashal Bazeh. So we were discussing in this chapter, you have the place, yeah? We were discussing in this chapter the fact that Hashem's light, and therefore his influence, is infinite. Hashem is infinite, therefore his spontaneous light is infinite. And therefore, you would have expected that the effect of his light, which is the world that he created, should also be infinite. Because that which is created by an infinite energy and by an infinite influence should reflect the influence that creates it. Nevertheless, we find that the world is not infinite. The world is finite. The world is limited. So how does a limited world become from Hashem's infinite power, infinite energy, infinite influence? The answer is tzimtzum. There's a process of contraction where the infinite light goes through a contraction and becomes limited and contracted and measured in accordance with the needs of the world. So Hashem took his infinite light, put it through a process of tzimtzum, of restriction, of contraction, so that there should develop a finite energy that can create a finite world. And we said that the relationship between the infinite light, which comes spontaneously from Hashem's infinity, and the finite light, which is generated through the process of tzimtzum, so the comparability between these two energies, the infinite and the finite, is be'ein aroich, totally incomparable. There's no ratio whatsoever. We said 1 to 1,000,000 has a ratio, it's 1,000,000. But finite to infinite, there's no ratio whatsoever. Because if you have 1,000,000, it's made up of 1,000,000 ones. Each one of those ones is 1,000,000. But if you have 1,000,000 and then you have infinity, how many millions do you need to get to infinity? Infinite. So it's not a fraction in any way. There's no ratio whatsoever. So the infinite light of Hashem is infinity. The finite light that encloses itself in creation, and as a result of that finitude within the light, creation is finite, is a limited light. And the limited is so minuscule, it's so tiny in comparison to the infinite, that is no ratio whatsoever. And we said that the limited light is the light that encloses itself within the creation. and the creation feels that light, and all the characteristics of the creation are a reflection of that limited light that encloses itself and is appreciated and felt by the creation. So all the characteristics of creation are a reflection of that light. And the infinite light, although it's present in every single dimension of creation, because you can't restrict infinity. If it's restricted, it's not infinite. So the infinite light is present everywhere, in every detail of creation. But it's present in a concealed manner. It's present in a what we call an encompassing manner, not an enclosed manner, like Memale Kalam, the light that fills all the worlds, but this is called the Oir HaSovev Kalam, the light that encompasses all the worlds, because it's present in an encompassing manner and in a concealed manner. And then we went on to explain the term Sovev, encircling or encompassing. We explained that it doesn't mean that the light is outside and the world is inside, and it only encircles it from outside. Because obviously that would not be a possibility when you're speaking about something infinite. Because if it's infinite, then there's no do not enter signs applicable for it. Right? You can't say the infinite light can't come into the world. The infinite light is infinite, it's everywhere. The only thing is, it's not going to be felt everywhere. It conceals itself from the world. In that sense, it's encircling and surrounding. When something encloses itself in the recipient and it's felt by the recipient, it's experienced by the recipient, and the character traits of the recipient are reflecting it, that we call enclothing and present in an immanent manner. When something is present, but its presence is not felt, and its presence is not experienced, its presence is concealed from that which it's present in, that is called surrounding and encompassing. So we're continuing now the hamashal. So an illustration of this, the word mashal here doesn't mean an analogy, but it means an illustration. Because the mashal here is not something different from what we're trying to explain. It's just an illustration of what we're trying to explain. Hamashal so take this physical earth, the physical globe. Yeah. So even in the physical world, we find certain forms of life, like human life, animal life, that are much more alive than the earth is. Right? The earth is inanimate, and it produces vegetables. The earth, under the circumstances that we're familiar with, doesn't produce animals or humans. That happened at the time of creation. It surely doesn't produce angels. Surely doesn't produce heavenly spheres. It doesn't produce celestial worlds. It's just an inanimate earth that has the capacity for giving forth vegetation. So haaretz halazu hagashmi is this physical earth. Although the glory of Hashem fills the whole world, when we say that the glory of Hashem fills the whole world, we don't just mean the contracted and restricted glory of Hashem as it's mamalik halalman, as it becomes the light that fills all the worlds that we spoke about before. When we say that his glory fills the earth, we mean v'hainu oilin sabar. We're talking about the infinite light of Hashem fills the earth. Kamei as the pasuk says, "Haloyas hashamayim v'esaretz ani maleinu Hashem." Behold, the heaven and the earth I fill, says Hashem. So Hashem Himself says, "I fill the heaven and the earth." So we're not speaking here about a contracted energy such as Oir Hamamalik Halam and the imminent light that fills the world, because we're talking about Ani. I said I with a capital I. Afal Pikein, so surely the infinite light of Hashem fills all the worlds, including this physical earth. Afal Pikein, nevertheless, Ein Mislabish B'Seichel B'Kiris Gilui Hashpah, but this infinite light does not enclose itself in the world in a way that its presence and its influence could be felt. The only thing that is felt in the earth is a very, very limited life force, which is only on the level of the still and the vegetable. And the rest of the infinite light of Hashem is described as encompassing above. Although it's really present in the world and in every detail of the world. So we use the term encircling or encompassing not as we're not letting it in to the details, the internal details. We use the term encircling and encompassing to mean that it's present but not felt. It's present but not experienced. It's present but not revealed. Since his influence, the influence of the Ein Sof, is not revealed in it in any greater manner, just the influence of Ein Sof on the earth is in a concealed and hidden way. Wherever we have a presence and an influence which is concealed, nikra makif milmaila, we describe it as encircling from above. But encircling from above doesn't mean that it's not within the details of the. It's not that it's not present. It is present in every detail, but it's present in a concealed way, and therefore we refer to it as opposed to something which is present in a way that it's experienced and felt, and its influence is felt. That would be called internalized, immanent, and something is present in a concealed way. We call it makif milmaila. We call it encircling from above. Why? Because that which is concealed, because of its greatness, is obviously a higher madrega than that which is revealed. So it's from above, meaning it's at a higher level, not from above, distant from the thing that it is giving life to. It's not distant; it's very much, very imminent, very, very, very much involved. But it's involved in a concealed way. And since the world of concealment is higher, loftier than the world of revelation, in other words, that which is concealed from the lower realms is obviously a higher madrega than that which is revealed. So we call it makif milmaila, that it's encircling from above. Because the concealed world is at a higher level than the revealed. This is along the lines of what we say every morning in the after Yishtabach. When we start the blessings of the Shema, we say Yoitzer Oir Uveirei Cheshech. Hashem forms the light and creates the darkness. So we all know that the four worlds, Atzilus, Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya, Bria is loftier than Yetzira, right? Bria is higher than Yetzira. So why do we say Yoitzer Oir Uveirei Cheshech? Should be the other way around. Yetzira, which is the lower world, should be called Cheshech. And Bria, which is the higher world, the more godly world, should be called Oir. Why do we say Yoitzer Oir Uveirei Cheshech? Because the world of Yetzirah, being that it's a lower world, it can be revealed to us. We can illuminate our lives. So we call it Yetzer Oir. While the world of Bria is so distant and so lofty and so holy and so removed, so concealed, that it's darkness in comparison to our experience, in relationship to our experience. So we call it Cheshech. So Yetzer Oir Uveirei Cheshech, that which is higher, Alma Diskasya, which is the concealed world, is always going to be loftier than the revealed. Therefore, when we say that the Ein Sof is present but in a concealed manner, we describe it as encircling and encompassing from above. Sure.
The other way around, especially before you're saying it's hidden. But in all the darkness, I would have thought opposite, because we're like low madrega, then we have to have a light.
Okay, so let me repeat your question for the people that are on the Zoom, and then I will try and address it. Question was, it should be the other way around, and that Oir is light, should be a higher madrega, and Cheshech, which is darkness, is a lower madrega, right? So if I understood the question correctly, the answer is quite straightforward. We're talking here relative to us, right? If you come out on a very sunny day, you look up at the sun straight, it blinds you, right? If it blinds you, you can't see anything. So even though it's a very intense light, being you don't have the capacity to be able to absorb that light and develop it and do what needs to be done with it. So for you, it's darkness. So the world of Bria has such an intense godly energy in it that we are not capable of absorbing it and being illuminated by it. So to us, it's Cheshech. By Yetzirah is more contracted, more restricted. Therefore, for us, it's Oir. So we refer to it as Oir and Cheshech. Right? So Yetzer Oir, Uveirei Cheshech. It's also why the custom is that when we say Yetzer Oir, we touch the hand film. Uveirei Cheshech, we touch the head film. And you would have thought that the head is higher than that they are, right? So Cheshech is according to what you were saying, which makes a lot of sense, is the lower one. But we see clearly that is not the case. Because we're talking Cheshech means such a great light that is so lofty and so intense that it cannot be revealed to us. So that's the idea of makif milmaila. We say that the greater light encircles from above. What do I mean from above? It's encircling, it's not above. It's present, but it's above in the sense that it's a concealed level, and that which is concealed is always loftier than that which is revealed. So Afal became. So even though we pointed out how the infinite divine presence is present in every detail of the world, don't I fill the heaven and the earth, says Hashem. Afal became, nevertheless, but this infinite light of Hashem does not enclose itself in this physical earth in a way of revealed presence or revealed influence. Because if it was revealed influence, then the earth wouldn't be an inanimate earth. It would be an earth that's filled with the most animated forms of life. At the highest level, it would be angelic. The fact that it's earthly is because the presence of the divine in its full intensity is not revealed in it. It's only a tiny little drop of life at the level of the inanimate or the still and the vegetable. And all the rest of the infinite light, because we refer to as encompassing it, encircling it. Although in practice it's actually in it. We said before that the infinite light of Hashem fills it, but it doesn't fill it in a way that we can actually feel His presence. And since we can't feel His presence, so to us it's considered encircling. In other words, to make it clear, you have sometimes an influence which is felt by the recipient. If the influence is felt by the recipient, then it's obvious that it's present. And it's present in every detail of the recipient, and that's why the recipient looks exactly the way it does and has all the characteristics that it does because of the influence that is permeating it. So that kind of influence is called internal influence. Now you can have a greater influence, which is as present as the previous one, but it's not experienced and absorbed and internalized by the recipient. So the recipient is living an existence which is as if though that infinite light was encircling it. As far as the infinite light is concerned, the infinite light is everywhere. It's in every detail. But being that it's only present because it's present, but it's not, its presence is not permeating the recipient, so we don't use the expression enclosed, because enclosed would mean a double relationship, right? A is within B, and B is encompassing and absorbing and taking in and being affected by A. Here, it's a one-way road. A is in B, but B doesn't feel A. So when A is in B, but B doesn't feel him, we describe it as encircling from above. But we have to be careful not to misunderstand that as encircling from above, meaning it's only aloof, it's only removed, and it's not present. Chas v'shalom, to say on the infinite light of Hashem that there's any place in any dimension of how you explain the word place that is where there's a do not enter sign for the infinite light of Hashem. There's no do not enter sign for the infinite light of Hashem. Hashem's infinite light is present in every detail of creation. The only question is it present in a revealed way, or is it present in an encompassing, encircling way, i.e., concealed?
Is it in time when it's light comes?
The question over here was, is there a time when this light will be able to be perceived? Brilliant question. So the answer is yes. The answer is the time will come. The Almighty will be king over the entire earth. On that day, Hashem will be one and His name will be one. What does it mean? Hashem will be one and His name will be one. Hashem's name in the Torah is written Yud Kei Vav Kei, right? But we don't pronounce the word Yud Kei Vav Kei. We pronounce Aleph Dalet Nun Yud. So there's Hashem and there's His name as we say. Why is that the case? Because Yud Kei Vav Kei describes Hashem in His infinity. Hashem in His infinity we can't relate to. It's beyond our capacity to relate. So when we express something verbally, we call Hashem by His name. That means we're interacting with Him, we're relating to Him. We can't relate to that level of godliness. So we call Him Aleph Dalet Nun Yud, which means the master. Right? So we can relate to that dimension of Hashem being our master, but Hashem's infinite presence in the way He's described, Yud Kei Vav Kei, we can't relate to. But every time we learn Torah, every time we do a mitzvah, we say, L'shem yichud kudsha brichu u'shkintei. We're creating a unity between the infinite Holy One, blessed be He, and His presence as it manifests itself in the world. And we draw down an extra influence from the essence of Hashem into the Shekhinah, which is godliness as it's imminently present in the world. Right? So every bit of Torah, every bit of mitzvah draws a little bit more of that revelation into the Shekhinah. Right? And then we're going to come to the point where Yeh Hashem echad u'shmei echad. Hashem will be one and His name will be one. Kefi shani nichtav kach ani nikra. The way I'm written, that's the way I'll be pronounced. So we'll be able to connect in the future. We'll be able to connect with the infinity of Hashem, and that's a marvel. That's an incredible thing that the infinity of Hashem will be able to be manifest in the finite world. The finite world will become receptive to the infinity of Hashem. That is not something that we can experience now, but it is something that will be experienced in the ultimate revelation of godliness in the world in the time of Mashiach and Tchias HaMesim, where it will be Kameshani Nichtav Kachani Nikra, the way that Hashem's name is written. That's the way it will be read, because the infinite presence of Hashem will be revealed in the entire world. So the world we'll see the world from a different angle. We'll see it from a different perspective. We will see how everything in the world is just a reflection of the infinity of Hashem. That's also the meaning of the Navi describes Hashamayim HaChadoshim Ha'eretz HaChadosha Asher Ani Oiseh, the new heaven and the new earth that I Hashem am creating. So the question is, what do you mean the new heaven and the new earth? The same heaven and earth that there was the whole time. It's going to be when Mashiach comes. It's not going to be a new heaven and earth. So why is it described as the new heaven and the new earth? The answer is, it'll be the same heaven and the same earth, but its function will be a completely different one. Because the word Olam comes from the word Helam, concealment. The world conceals God. Right, now look at this table. I see the table. I don't see God. But by Yomahu Yeh Hashem Echad U'Shmei Echad, it'll be a different world. I'll see the world from a different perspective. When I'll see a physical existence, I will see that this physical existence is a reflection and an expression of the divine energy that's within it. And that divine energy that's within it will not conceal over the infinite energy of the Ein Sof. So Ein Sof will be expressed in every single detail. But the world, as we know it today, with its limitations and restrictions, that's what we're learning about.
When we say,
yeah. So the question was, when we make this connection, when we do a mitzvah, and we say, do we have a little bit of a feeling of it? So the answer is like this: whatever we feel is not anything comparable to what is actually being achieved. Because the fact that we can feel it and remain limited shows that obviously it's not the real thing. So it's happening, but it's happening in a realm that is beyond us. One of the illustrations that might help understand this, imagine you take a person and you bring him into a big hall, and it's pitch dark, and you put him on a blindfold. And you tell him your task is to switch on all the lights. The whole wall is full of light switches. Yeah, and your task is to switch on all the lights. But he's blindfolded. So he goes around and steps on the wall. Finally, he hits a light switch. He picks it up. He believes that probably he turned on a light. He doesn't know. He doesn't see. Yeah, and then he goes further and further, and finds another light switch. He picks it up. And so he goes around. It takes him who knows how long. Goes around the whole hall, taking on light switches. When he turns on the last light switch and removes the blindfold, and he sees this bright, beautifully bright lit up hall. Beautiful, that he has illuminated through his efforts. Right? So every time we do a mitzvah, we're switching on a light. But we're blindfolded, so we don't see the light. Time will come, the blindfold will be removed, and then we'll see how every mitzvah that we did illuminated the world, made it a whole different world.
when are we going to see?
Very soon when Mashiach comes. We're nearly there. How will we be able to take it? Very good question. So the gist of it is that because we have struggled to get there, so it's not something that's just dumped on us. We've worked on it, and through the process of working on it, we've refined ourselves to the point that we'll be able to be capable of heaven. And it says that this is one of the wonders of Torah, because Torah is a combination. It says Hashem yivarech es amoy basholem. Hashem will bless his nation with peace. The peace is a reference to Torah. Why is Torah called peace? Because Torah is a combination between the finite and the infinite. On one hand, Torah is one with the Almighty, it was infinite. On the other hand, Torah's details and intricate details, a lot of limitation in Torah. But every detail in the Torah, every limited detail in the Torah is a manifestation of the infinity of Hashem and His will and His wisdom. Right? So through Torah, we get the ability to join together the finite and the infinite. So we can still remain physical and be able to get access and be able to enjoy the revelation of the infinity of Hashem.
So when Mashiach comes, then we'll be remembered that we can actually see the light.
Yeah, that's how we'll be able to be in the third Beis Hamikdash and see the incredible revelation of godliness there and not disintegrate. So even though the infinite presence of Hashem is in the world in all its details, Afal became nevertheless, but what encloses itself in a revealed way, is only a tiny little bit of life force in his daimon, the still and the vegetable. And the entire Eidin Sof is referred to as Seiviv, as encompassing it, although it's literally in it. Because his influence doesn't reveal itself more than just the inanimate and the vegetable. And it's influencing it in a concealed manner. Every influence that comes in a concealed way is called encompassing from above. Because the concealed world is on a higher level than the revealed world. And therefore, anything which is above us, in the sense that it's greater than our experience, we refer to as higher than us because it's from the concealed world as opposed to the revealed. So in summary, the infinite light of Hashem is present in every detail of existence and every detail of the world, but it's present in a concealed manner. Since it's present in a concealed manner, we describe it as encompassing as opposed to the finite light. And the restricted and limited light, which encloses itself in every creation in accordance with its unique and limited capacity, that is called invested and involved in Malay Kalam, and that which fills it. We'll hold it over here and wish everyone Hatzlacha Rabba and everything. May we hear great news from Eretz Yisrael. Yidden should have a tremendous Nitzachon and a tremendous Yeshua, and we should be Zeicha, take it from the Yad to the Geula, Amitis Vashleimah, from Mashiach Tzidkenu, and we should be celebrating the Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi. Imheira v'yameinu amen.
Thank you.
Amen. Thank you.
You're very welcome.